right, on to the next deck that we have. Another pretty meta-heavy deck right now that a lot of people have been playing for a while. And honestly, I don't know how it's taken me so long to get to the point of actually doing a video on this deck. So we have dubbed it Breakfast at Tiffany's, at least on cast we have anyways. Because why not, to be honest with you. We got Raka, we got Kench eating stuff up every so often or whenever he can, whenever he gets that spell each turn. So pretty fun deck. I'm actually surprised it still does so well, because something like Fearsome Mistwraiths or really any kind of aggro deck usually just wrecks this deck. Mainly Fearsome, though, just because this deck has basically no Fearsome blockers other than Positivo. So with that said, we got Raka Tahm. We're going to go ahead and do 2 games. As always, go through the deck first. And as always, everybody, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you do enjoy this deck video. My name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. You're going to find tons of Legends of Runeterra content on this channel, including lots of tournament footage as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Tahm, Kench, Raka. Good old Star Spring, Breakfast at Tiffany's stuff, heal, whatever. Alright, and here's the deck list to go ahead and get started. So this is a pretty typical standard deck list nowadays, to be honest with you. There's not a whole lot of variance in this deck list. I'm going to go ahead and turn down that volume for you guys. You know, I will say early on, there was some times where this deck would not run Broadback Protector, but this does help a ton in aggro matchups that aren't Fearsome, because it still doesn't really help in Fearsome matchups, but it does help against discard aggro, which is still pretty relevant. There's actually a lot of different aggro decks, to be honest with you. There's Draven, Darius, Targon type stuff. There's Spider aggro popping up again. Discard aggro, just like I mentioned. Fearsome, Mistwraith. So there's a lot of aggro. So it's definitely worth putting in nowadays. Whereas before, I think it was kind of just going a little bit more all in on the aggressive strategy as the backup win con was Star Shepherd. So there's even that random elusive heal unit, which honestly, I don't even remember the name of the card. I'm going to have to find it here in a second. But basically, whenever something gets healed, that thing that got healed ends up getting elusive. So if I can find it at some point, chilling here. It's not Lounging Lizard. That's a new card as well, though. I don't know. But anyways, this deck, basically you heal stuff. If you didn't know, if you haven't seen this deck before, you heal a bunch of stuff. You have a lot of self-damaging units. So you got the Krusty Codger, the Boxtopus, Fortune Croaker, which is, this card is on point ever since it came out. I think this is the best card of the previous, like, I don't want to say expansion, because Call of the Mountain is the expansion, but after the previous release of cards, I think this is probably the best one to come from them. Then we have the usual heal stuff. We have Guiding Touch. We have Star Shaping in here. And then Astral Protection as well to kind of finish out that suite. And then buffs. Pale Cascade, Bastion. We do want the buffs as well, because basically anything in this deck that's going to be able to save a unit is good. Now, another consideration that a lot of people have been putting in here is Sunblessed Vigor. Right here, grant an ally +0/+2. Biggest thing with this is that it is grant, so unlike Elixir of Iron, which is give, it's only for the turn. This does cost 1 additional mana to allow your ally to keep that, but that's a big deal, especially with something like Tahm Kench if you do use it on Kench. So, couple things with this. If you are going up against Mistwraiths, this Boxtopus is literally your only blocker, unless you level up Tahm Kench, which, let's be honest, you're usually not going to level up Tahm Kench. Very rarely is that actually your win condition, right? So, if you do have a Boxtopus, first off, you want to mulligan for it big time. You want to dig. And you want to keep this bad boy on the field. So you don't want to drop the Boxtopus until you have something to save it. Most likely Astral Projection is what you're going to want. So, with that said, that kind of segues into one of the major components of this deck, which is keeping units on board. Because, oh, by the way, we win with Star Spring, if you didn't know. People still are not really running a whole lot of landmark removal. There is Noxus now running that every so often. You see it's the card either you kill a damaged unit or you kill a landmark, one or the other. But otherwise, there's really no... Oh, and Crumble. Crumble's being run in a lot of Shadow Isles decks now. So there's some removal, but generally speaking, you're not going to really run into it. Star Spring needs a wide board. And if you do get Star Spring early on in the game, you will almost always win unless your opponent has landmark removal, like I just mentioned, right? So, but you want to not be dropping units on the board unless you have protection. So, as an example, let's say it's turn one, you can almost always drop a Crusty Conjure. But let's say it is turn one. Let's say it's turn one, but you don't have something like Guiding Touch, you don't have Astral Projection, you don't have Pale Cascade, you don't have these things in hand. Let's say you just have a bunch of units. Generally speaking, you want to try to continue to wait. You can bank that spell mana for the first couple of turns until turn 3, until you're able to draw some sort of protection. Because your units are very vulnerable if you don't have that burst speed reaction to go ahead and, oh, you're going to Mystic Shot my Crusty Conjure? Well, I'm going to save it with Guiding Touch. Or I'm going to save it with, if you're playing Sunblessed Vigor. So, same thing with Box to Push. You absolutely cannot be dropping this until you have an Astral Protection in your hand. Even against, like, all right, let's say Mistwraiths, you want to think, oh, okay, I got to drop this ASAP because I need a blocker just for this first one. I'm just going to sacrifice my Box to Push. No, you are not. No, you need to take that damage, and you're going to have to go ahead and wait until you get Astral Protection before you actually keep Box to Push. You need multiple trades with Box to Push because there's only 3. Those are the only fearsome blockers you got. You got to hang on to them as long as possible. And you do have plenty of heal for phase too, right? You have Broadback Protector, which is basically infinite heal in this deck. You have Star Shaping, and you also have Guiding Touch. Star Shaping on a unit, by the way, one of the smartest things you can do in this deck. But without further ado, let's go ahead. We're going to get into some gameplay. 2 games, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Let's go. All right, we got 2 games here. So the second one, I think I really sped up a lot too because it was kind of long. Sometimes these Raka Kench games can go kind of long, not going to lie. All depends on the matchup. This one in particular actually didn't go too long, even though it isn't a Aurelion Soul deck. This was a really weird deck. This is in Diamond too, so I don't really know. I mean, it's Aurelion Soul, right? I mean, Aurelion Soul is Aurelion Soul, and I shout out to how crazy diverse this meta currently is right now. So, but yeah, so Star Shepherd. Star Shepherd, you can almost always. So we were talking before when I was going through the deck itself, on saving units and whatnot, and making sure that you maintain as many units on board as possible. So, couple things you need to take into consideration is your region matchup that you're going up against. So right now, we do have Ionia and Targon, and they don't really have targeted removal. Those are not regions that have a lot of targeted removal, or AoE removal for that matter, beyond, something with Singular Will, where it recalls everything, and that's really not removal. So just take that into consideration. Also, Star Shepherd, first turn, generally speaking, is pretty safe just because it does have that 3 health break point, where really the only thing at that point on turn 2 that's going to kill it is something like a Get Excited. Most of the others, or if they top deck a Gotcha, right? So, generally speaking, it's pretty safe to play Star Shepherd, and that's really only against PNZ. But anyways, you can see we already have a wide field developed. Man, I cannot. This Toad, man. All right, and I'm not talking about unload the Toad here. I'm talking about. Wow, I just, the fact that you can deal damage to 2 things and draw is crazy in this deck. It's absolutely crazy. So, one of the best cards, like I said, from this previous set, this card works so well in this deck, and many others as well, just triggering different damage effects. So, good to see it just getting work done. Fortune Croaker. So, again, Fortune Croaker actually also allowing us to have a pretty wide field here, while still not having Star Spring, which feels kind of bad. Still aren't able to get it down. But we do have Tahm Kench on the field, which at this point, with how my opponent's deck seems like it's going, which I don't know what they're playing, we're going to be able to level up this Tahm Kench. Because, again, no targeted removal, really. I mean, they do have things like possibly Bastion or things to protect their units, but Tahm Kench's spell it doesn't deal damage, right? So, like, if they protect their unit, they're really just losing card advantage against something like his spell. And we even have the Raka engine going. So this is kind of like where this deck originated from, to be honest with you, is the synergy between Tahm Kench and Soraka. Which, unfortunately, so I think when this deck was originally created, it seemed like it was a pretty cool win con to be able to Soraka, Tahm Kench over and over and over again, be able to just detain all of your opponent's units. Basically, you get like a 2-mana obliterate every turn. Nuts, right? But Tahm Kench, oddly enough, is like not really a reliable win condition. Like you can't actually win with just having Raka Tahm Kench on the board. You would have to protect them with things like Bastion, and on top of that, you have to buff Tahm Kench up, especially as much as possible with something like Astral Protection, because he just doesn't have enough health to eat some of those big units. Like, in those Field of Rush decks, we have Tryndamere, we have those huge Overwhelm units, Trundle. So because they strike him, it becomes a little difficult to actually utilize that Devour each turn. So, Fey Folk, 2 of them. All right, well, our opponent's sticking in the game. So all right, actually, let me go over this too. We still don't have Star Spring, so as beautiful as a board this would be with Star Spring, that's not going to be our win con. Oddly enough, and I don't really know what my opponent's going for here. I mean, again, they have Aurelion Soul, so I think they're just trying to go for the Aurelion Soul level up and just play like the late game control type thing going on here. We can go wide and we can actually kind of aggro down people, right? It all depends on the deck they're playing. Something specifically, like if you think of the old school, I'm going to compare this deck, whatever this is that we're looking at, to something like the old school Ezreal Karma. That deck didn't have a lot of AoE removal. It had stuns and stuff too, so generally speaking, you could keep units on the board at an okay rate. So what you could do is go wide a lot of the time. Even if your deck wasn't really that aggressive, you could still go wide and be able to deal a decent chunk of damage to your opponent. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. We're going wide. We have the Tahm Kench, which unfortunately, we could heal it, but it's we can't use the Devour yet anyways. We do have the attack token, but we're going to pass because we have the Star Spring. At this point, we can go ahead and go for the Star Spring the Star Spring win condition, I should say, because of how ridiculous our board is. Like I said from the beginning, having that board is just insane to be able to get Star Spring off there. And Aurelion Soul we're actually not even scared about right now, right? Because it's not going to level up. We can use this, so this does not strike the Tahm Kench, this just procs the Spell Shield, because Spell Shield does negate the spell, so it doesn't actually trigger whatsoever. Now, here's the concern. With Aurelion Soul, I should say, there are some Celestials that will be able to obliterate the landmark. So that's kind of what we need to be on the lookout for if we're still going for the landmark win condition. Because our opponent has Aurelion Soul, we kind of have to do that now. On the bright side, and this is kind of why Star Shepherd is in the deck. I said before, Box Suppose is your only Fearsome blocker. Technically, after 2 heal triggers, Star Shepherd is a Fearsome blocker as well. Very much a Fearsome blocker. I mean, hell, it's at 18 attack right now. So, Star Shepherd, great in this deck, especially, like I said earlier, if you are doing the go wide, aggro down your opponent's strategy, it can definitely pay off for you. Problem is, most of the time, they're just going to get chump blocked anyways. And that 18 damage is not going to get through the face, so it is what it is. But we're able to use another Devour here. Basically, keep the board as small as possible. What we don't want to eat the 5-2. All right, this is actually, let's get into this. You have to be very careful when you're devouring a unit with Tahm Kench. You need to kind of think about what you need to play around on your opponent's side of the field. Like, as an example, our opponent, and I know this doesn't apply to that, but Pale Cascade. If you're devouring a unit on your opponent's side of the field and it only has 2 less attack than Tahm Kench has health, and your opponent has mana for Pale Cascade, you pretty much have to assume that they have Pale Cascade if they're playing Targon. Because if that does get played, you're now losing your Kench and that Devour spell, which the Devour spell is free, but you are losing the 2 mana in tempo to play that spell. So just one of the things that you need to be on the lookout for. But because we are able to get that off, we are able to heal up this Tahm Kench, which feels really nice. Now he's at 10 health. And it's funny, so like playing against Field of Rush, which I played against a few times with this deck as well, you are actually at a decent rate able to get Tahm Kench up over 10 health to actually be devouring those larger 10 attack units. The problem is they usually can deal more they can deal the damage to kill you faster than you have turns to start devouring and healing your Tahm Kench. Like, it's kind of a slow process to get that done, unfortunately. So, but as you can see here, this is basically just us finishing out the game. We're going to be able to make a lot of trades here. I think, yeah, the Wish actually gets the win. Soraka's Wish, honestly, is a valid... Soraka's Wish is a valid card to actually, like, play around as your win con. It's very... You don't main deck the card. it's only going to be in hand when you have Soraka on the field. Just something to think about as an alternate way of winning the game as you kind of play to your outs a little bit later. So you can see we went in for the attack because we know our opponent's probably not going to want to trade a fearsome attacker there in the Precious Pet, because fearsome attackers are really good in this matchup for this reason. So you can see here, we have the Boxtopus as a blocker, but we're not going to utilize it because you are going to have that misfortune effect as well, which is just going to kill it. And we don't have the Guiding Touch open, so we just have to eat that damage. It turns out that actually ends up working out for us. And then this is something these are certain things you have to be really careful for, because having that Boxtopus, being able to pull that misfortune is huge. Now, this is all really scary. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we're already at 9. Like, the Pirate Burn is doing, which I was talking about Burn earlier. This is yet another version of Burn. It's doing its job. It's turn 5, and we're down to 9. That's insane. So that's really good for them. It's probably not likely we're going to win. But the way that this plays out, they actually start to run out of steam. We're able to keep getting these blocks in with this Boxtopus, and I'm telling you, this Boxtopus, you know, I guess the biggest thing, not even just that it's a fearsome blocker, but you saw it pull the misfortune previously. Having that 3 attack is absolutely insane in this deck. It is able to pick off so many units like a misfortune that are super, super important to your opponent, and it has that 4 health, which means it's able to live through most of those attacks, or most of those trades, I should say, because those units that it wants to kill usually also have 3 attack, so it barely lives. But now we're starting to get some pressure on because our opponent hasn't dealt with our field. We have plenty of cards. We have plenty of attackers. We even have the Pale Cascade, which, I mean, I think we should, if we're going to play that, we should play during combat. I think I saved it to save a unit in case my opponent blocked, so there's that. But I don't know. Our opponent has 5 cards in hand. I'm almost positive at this point that they're going to play a Decimate, which is why I'm keeping the Guiding Touch. So one thing to note with heal playing against the burn deck is you want to be responsive with the heal. You don't want to heal just because you have it, unless you are like you just have a lot of mana, you're trying to play mana efficiently. So you can see here's the Decimate, it comes out, then we play the Guiding Touch. So it draws those cards out like Decimate, which was actually a 5 damage Decimate. Wow. And yeah, we're able to win the game because of it. All right, and that second game was actually a lot shorter than I had thought. I don't know why I thought it was going to be longer, but it ended up being a Pirate aggro match, which, I mean, that just goes, I mean, there's a lot of heal. We actually didn't even get most of the heal in that matchup, but we still won. I think our opponent just had a bricked hand or something, because they were really close with that Decimate in the barrel at the end. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This deck is honestly, it's pretty fun. I'm surprised it's still doing as well as it does. I think it's really going to start to fall off a cliff soon enough. It just seems like a very fragile deck, but fun to play nonetheless. Definitely check it out. It got me, I actually played it a lot in Plat to get to Diamond, I think. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you.